and welcome here to TalkFCB, and welcome back to the channel here today, guys, where we are going to be discussing the big news of the day in the footballing world, that Manchester United have finally sacked Ruben Amorim. Now, you might be wondering, well, okay, fine, that's interesting, but how is that really relevant to Barcelona? Well, the interesting thing about this is that the number one leading candidate right now to replace him just happens to be Xavi Hernandez. Now, in today's video, we are going to be discussing, first of all, should Xavi be interested in this job? Is this a job that he should be taking? Is it something there that would be beneficial to his managerial CV? And more importantly as well, is he a coach that would succeed at Man United? So today, if you're a Barca fan that's interested in this situation, or maybe if you're a Man United fan wondering what Xavi would bring, well, sit back, relax, and let's delve into it. Because first things first then, on this whole situation, yes, this morning Man United finally made the decision to sack Ruben Amorim as the Man United coach. He has been relieved quite swiftly today of his coaching duties. Now, what's extraordinary about that whole situation is that Man United, they didn't sack him because of results. They didn't sack him there because of the win rate that we've seen, very, very well publicised. They sacked him because he questioned the hierarchy. It was nothing to do with the football, nothing to do there with the formations, anything like that. They literally just sacked him because of a series of interviews recently where he has been a little bit more critical of those above him. So already they are starting to understand what Xavi would potentially be walking into. Now, first of all, would Xavi be interested in this job? Now, I think that's interesting because we have known now for quite some time, since he left Barca, he's not been too keen to jump right back in. We know that he has had a number of offers there from the Bundesliga, maybe even from Premier League clubs as well, and those even further overseas. But Xavi has been patiently waiting for a big opportunity. It seemed as though in Xavi's mind, he had something there. He has been waiting for a very specific project. That is something that Xavi wants. He wants to go in to a big team, I believe, with a real point to prove and something that he could turn into a real project for him. Now, Man United, in my opinion, would fit the bill. It is a massive club, we don't need to state that here. It's a big, big challenge, but it is something that, in my opinion, Xavi would potentially be interested in. But would it be the right fit? Is this a club here? Is this a situation that he could succeed in? Given that so many coaches before him, Amarin, Ten Hag, even Mourinho, Louis van Gaal, David Moyes, all of these people, they have struggled since the departure of Alex Ferguson. Well, it's very interesting, because in my opinion, Xavi going into Man United right now, it's kind of in a similar way in some ways to when he did arrive at Barca. People seem to forget that when Xavi arrived as the coach of Barca, yes, he knew the club, he'd been there his entire life, yes, he fully understood what was expected of him, but the situation, it was unprecedented. When Xavi came into Barca, we were literally in 8th place in La Liga. Under Ronald Koeman, things had spiralled out of control. It was a nightmare. And somebody had to pick up the pieces. Somebody had to put us back together. And the speed of which Xavi worked, the speed of which he was able to completely transform things, it was unbelievable. It was genuinely staggering there. Things overnight changed. And the most incredible thing, with barely any reinforcements. You remember the first January transfer window that he had. It was the likes of Aubameyang coming in. It was Adama Traore on loan. It was Dani Alves coming back at 40 years old. Those were the reinforcements that he had. He did not have big money to spend, and yet the football was transformed overnight. You all remember that incredible February period when Barca were blowing teams away, scoring goals for fun, a run of incredible wins, and that was the really incredible impact that Xavi had immediately upon becoming Barca coach. What is also very interesting about Xavi, thinking here about Manchester United, again, thinking about maybe the lack of investment that may be coming, because don't forget, Amarin here has been sacked because he was getting a bit frustrated, maybe wanted more backing, maybe wanted more power in terms of the players that were coming into the club. And the thing about Xavi is, he had shown that he can get the best out of what he has. Initially at least at Barca, he really did get every last drop of ability out of that team. And not only that, he will look within. At Barca, that is something that is ingrained in you. He came through La Masia, he became an incredible player, he became a legend, and now as a coach, he did the same. He was looking for the best young players, and he gave them every chance. There is a reason why, even here today, we say Xavi set the foundations for what Hansi Flick has inherited, those young players, the nucleus of this team. Xavi put his trust in them. And I'm thinking there at Man United, somebody like Manu. We've all heard that Ruben Amorim, doesn't rate him at all, hasn't given him a second really in the team. Very, very low trust in some of those younger players from Amarin. I believe that Xavi would be the complete opposite of that. And Man United are a club like Barca who like to trust their own. They like to use the academy. They've got a long-standing record there of academy players being in their squad. They want to see them succeed. And Xavi would be very, very good at doing just that. But something I do feel that does go under the radar, and something here with regards to Man United and the Premier League that's very much worth mentioning with regard to Xavi is all about the setup, all about the formation, all about the kind of football that he could play. Because a lot of people maybe who hadn't really witnessed Xavi's Barca on a regular basis, especially there as he went further into his time at coach, they may think, it was all tiki-taka, it was all, quick passing, attacking football, relentless play. Actually, he was a lot more pragmatic than you may think, than you may believe. I think certainly there, if you're looking at Barca's title-winning season under Xavi, when we won La Liga, a lot of those games, we just got through them. We were very, very solid defensively. We were racking up there clean sheet after clean sheet after clean sheet. A lot of those games were won by a single goal. He was a lot more defensive-minded at times than you would expect him to be. But it all depends on the kind of players that he has at his disposal there. If he has good defensive players, if he has a good hub there in the back line, maybe he won't have that at United. He may be forced to play a different way. But I do think Xavi is a bit more flexible than people may believe. It's not just about one style of play. It's not just about attack. Because obviously with Amarim, he was very, very stubborn in terms of his system. We all know about the back three, the back five there, that he actually changed for a few games. It worked out, and yet he still reverted to type. He still wanted to be very, very stubborn in the way that he wanted to play. I believe Xavi will be a lot more flexible, a lot more easygoing in that regard. I think he will be led by the players that he has. I think he will be led there by who's available to him, what kind of players can make an impact. Somebody there like Bruno Fernandes, he'll be looking to get the absolute best out of him, putting him in the best areas of the field where he can make an impact. He won't sacrifice big players and sort of put them outside of their comfort zone, put them in a place they don't want to be. He will look to build upon the best talents that he has, and he is pretty tactically flexible. However, by far and away, one of the most important things here that we need to think about, that we need to look into with regard to Xavi, Manchester United, and it was exactly the same at Barca, it's about the media spotlight. It is about the one thing that maybe people don't talk about. People will talk a lot about, how are you going to play? What tactics are you going to produce? What signings are you going to make? What kind of personality do you have as a coach? What they don't talk about is the intense pressure, the speculation, the scrutiny that you will be under as the Barca coach, as the Man United coach. And the beauty of Xavi, unlike Amarim, unlike Eric Ten Hag, unlike other coaches that have come before them, Xavi has the ultimate experience of that media spotlight, of the pressure that you will be under when you step into that role, when you step through the door. Every move is going to be looked over by the media and questioned. And Xavi's had full experience of that. And I would also say he's had it worse at Barca. And the reason why, and we're going to talk about Xavi's exit from Barca, that is something there that Man United fans should know more about and, should certainly bear in mind as well. But in terms of Xavi's relationship with the media, I think he has it worse in Barca as opposed to Manchester, because he knew everybody personally. He's somebody there who'd spent his entire career at Barca. He knew journalists. He almost felt as though in a lot of press conferences, he owed them something, like he had to give the answers, like he had to constantly explain himself and really go into detail about things. I think he would have learned a lot from that. I believe when he arrives, if he is to arrive in Manchester, he will be a lot more withdrawn from the media. I don't think he'll be giving things out. I don't think he'll be listening too much to the speculation, to the noise around the club. I think he will have learned a lot from his time at Barca in terms of that intense media pressure, and that is the perfect preparation for him. But yeah, I think we have to talk about Xavi's exit, because we've spoken about him a lot. We've given him a lot of praise here. Certainly Xavi has a lot of quality as a coach, a lot of things that he will have learned and improved upon. He was very young, don't forget, very inexperienced when he came to Barca. One thing you have to say is, he was sacked as the Barcelona coach because in a press conference he ultimately said, we can't compete with Real Madrid. Towards the end of his time at the club, he did start to become very frustrated by the lack of backing in terms of signings there, in terms of bringing players in, and because of the lack of money that was available. And he did start to sort of say, well, we can't compete with Madrid then. We're not going to be able to challenge for titles. We're not going to be able to go for Champions Leagues. And that is ultimately what brought his downfall at the club. He wasn't happy in that moment. But it took a while to get there. And what I would say right now about Man United, if Xavi turned up there and ultimately said, well, we're not really ready right now to compete with Arsenal, with Man City. I mean, Amarin has been saying that anyway. Amarin for ages now has been saying, well, we're nowhere near. We've got to be way better. We've got to sign these players. So it wouldn't be a massive shock. And I don't think it would kind of send the shockwaves round that Xavi did when you say that as the Barca coach, when you're comparing it to Real Madrid. Man United right now are in a very different stage, because I would almost say it got more and more difficult for Xavi at Barca the better we became. The more pressure that was on him to deliver, not just the league title, not just work your way to the top of the league, but when it became then, now you've got to go for the Champions League. Now you've got to keep making those advancements. Now you've got to keep making those steps up. It almost became as though when the pressure was increased and increased and increased, and you were aiming for the very, very best, then maybe he wasn't quite ready for that stage of his managerial career yet. At that point, I don't feel as though he was ready to make that next step, and that's why we went down the route of Hansi Flick. Somebody there, a different kind of character, different kind of tactics. We went a different direction, but at first, he was the perfect man. He was the perfect man to get Barca back on a level footing. He was the perfect man for Barca to be able to operate in incredibly difficult times in terms of the finances, in terms of improving his squad. His arms were tied behind his back, and above all else, he left the club in a better way than he found it. That's really important here. No matter what happened at the end of Xavi's time, you cannot say that he left it in a worse place than he inherited it. He came in, he worked well with the young players, he worked on the team, he worked on the squad there, he built something very, very special, and when it was time for him to step aside, he did so. He didn't complain, he didn't moan, he hasn't said anything bad about the club. He has taken it all in his stride as the ultimate professional that he is, and for that reason, if Man United are able to get Xavi, it would be a blessing for their club. Let me just say that right now. I believe that Xavi going there, it's a risk. It is always going to be a risk. Man United is such a difficult club. It's a difficult job to get right. But I think Xavi will know if he did, if he was the man to sort of bring them back, to get them back where they feel they belong. I mean, that would be extraordinary for him. And could you imagine, by the way, Xavi Hernandez going up against Pep Guardiola in the Manchester derby? That would be absolute cinema right there. But I'm really interested in your thoughts right now, guys. Whether you are a Barcelona fan, whether you are a Manchester United fan right here, do you think Xavi should go to Man United? Do you think it's a job that he should accept? And do you believe he could succeed there? Because in my opinion, there's a lot of potential. Xavi is still a coach who is waiting for that perfect opportunity. And is this his moment to make his next step? Let me know your thoughts down below. I hope that you have enjoyed today's video. Bit of a different topic that we have discussed here on the channel. But I will see you soon, guys, with lots more on the way. But until next time, as always, Vejka, El Barca.